Liam Payne fans called out One Direction management for mistreating the band. Before I get into the tea, I just want to put out a disclaimer. Please do not send any hate to Liam Payne, Psycho Records, or anyone else involved in this story. This video is simply meant to report on the news and give some insight on the situation. On October 15th, artist Jessie Ware interviewed Liam Payne on her Table Manners podcast. In the beginning, Liam opened up about how his success with One Direction impacted his solo career. It's just super difficult. It's hard to drop those standards once you've had. I mean, when we first released Strip That Down, it did what it did. It just scared the out of me, to be honest, because I had already done it all once. And then we landed on this massive thing and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And it scared the out of me. He later shared details of his experience being in One Direction and how their schedule was a mess. I used to get off the stage and then you'd be that high off all the endorphins, whatever, get horrendously drunk, get up at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then do it all again. But we used to come off the stage because at the time, towards the end of it, when we were that busy, it was like you would. We'd write the album in 2 weeks. He added that his management team would sell tour tickets before the band even wrote the album. The problem we had is that they used to sell the tour before we'd written the album. So they'd sell the tour and be, all right, we've sold the stadiums. He said the level of fame he experienced scared him and that he felt self-destructive. Because I knew it was going really well. The one thing I say to people is getting into doing all this sort of stuff. The success is the bit that will you more than anything. When it's not successful, you're just kind of working harder at it depending on the person you are. But most of the time, the successful bit, it just scared out of me and I wanted nothing to do with it. There's no stop button. Like, you got no control over your life. And that's why I lost complete control of everything. And that was the last 2 years have been trying to take control of life. He also said he lost his love for singing for a long time and that the band was 100% overworked. I had no personal life. I learned nothing about myself. Like, I remember getting into therapy one time and the guy was like, what do you like to do? I didn't know. I haven't got a clue. So I just sat there in the chair going like, what do I actually like? I just lived so long as this like reclusive pop star who's afraid of people who just stayed inside all the time. At the end of the interview, he shared whether or not he was relieved that One Direction broke up. It was really scary at first, but I needed to stop, definitely. It would have me. Later that month, Liam appeared on The Jonathan Ross Show and shared details about One Direction breaking up.
In the end, I really genuinely do think that we needed the break that we had because it was just getting so hectic. Like, we would literally be at award shows and we'd win the most awards on the night and then never see the after party. We'd already be on a plane going somewhere else to do the next show, to go somewhere else. And just by the end of it, it's like, we were kids, man, so it was pretty crazy.
After the interviews, several fans said they were heartbroken and changed their mind about wanting a reunion. I've loved One Direction since 2010, but I don't want them to get back together anymore. Like, their mental health is so much better now, and they seem a lot happier. Like, I mean, I'd love for them to get back together, but I'd rather them not for their own well-being. It was all the management. I mean, come on, they were teenagers. They weren't guided right. I'm glad he's being honest about the fact that they were overworked. I even noticed the amount of work they were doing, and it made me uncomfortable just to watch. One Direction were so much more controlled than any other traditional artists. They put out 5 albums in 5 years with 4 highly successful tours. They never got a break. There are so many teenagers that got messed up by the industry. We're very lucky that all 5 of them made it. Some of them brought up former One Direction member Zayn Malik and said the public owes him an apology. The same people who didn't believe Zayn, who was honest and said these things 5 years before, are now saying here, aw, poor Liam, I am feeling sorry for him and all. Oh please, you double-minded people. You all owe an apology to Zayn. Do people now understand where Zayn was coming from when he left? He wasn't happy in the band, but it wasn't just him. His anxiety got worse, and he started to starve himself while on tour because of how busy they were. Now Liam and other boys are saying the same things. Y'all, went down behind closed doors. For context, let's dive into One Direction's history. In April 2010, the One Direction members met for the first time through the X Factor, a British talent show. They were still teenagers at the time, ranging between 16 to 19 years old. Each of them auditioned for the boys category and were told that they weren't strong enough to go through to the live shows individually. Instead of sending them home, singer and guest judge Nicole Scherzinger suggested that they form a group at the X Factor boot camp. The group was given 2 weeks to get to know each other and work on their music. While they gained popularity in the UK, they finished the X Factor in 3rd place. In January 2011, the band reportedly signed a £2 million contract with Psycho Records. Psycho was founded by record producer and X Factor judge Simon Cowell and was acquired by Sony. In February 2012, One Direction released their first American single, What Makes You Beautiful, and went platinum 4 times in the US alone. That same month, they received an award for the Best British Single at the annual Brit Awards, one of the biggest events in the music industry. In March 2012, the band made history with their Up All Night album, which entered the US Billboard 200 chart at number 1. According to City News, this makes them the first British group to ever debut at number 1 in the US with their first album release. Not even the Beatles or the Spice Girls were able to accomplish this. Between 2013 and 2014, the band received several more awards at the annual American Music Awards, Brit Awards, and Teen Choice Awards. In March 2015, One Direction's management team announced that Zayn was leaving the band on Facebook. After 5 incredible years, Zayn Malik has decided to leave One Direction. Niall, Harry, Liam, and Lewis will continue as a 4-piece and look forward to the forthcoming concerts of their world tour and recording their 5th album, due to be released later this year. Zayn says, "My life with One Direction has been more than I could ever have imagined, but after 5 years, I feel like it is now the right time for me to leave the band. I'd like to apologize to the fans if I've let anyone down, but I have to do what feels right in my heart. I am leaving because I want to be a normal 22-year-old who is able to relax and have some private time out of the spotlight. I know I have 4 friends for life in Lewis, Liam, Harry, and Niall. I know they will continue to be the best band in the world." Within 24 hours after the announcement was made, there were more than 3.5 million tweets about Zayn leaving. 911, what's your emergency? Zayn Malik has left the band and I'm having trouble breathing today. Me all day. Zayn is leaving One Direction. This is the end of them. This is the end of me. This is the end of the world. I don't think I'm ever gonna be happy again. Hashtag always in our hearts, Zayn Malik. The Manchester Evening News also reported that workers made more than 200 calls to employment law experts requesting compassionate leave. In August 2015, The Sun reported that the band decided to go their separate ways to focus on solo projects. A source told the publication, "The guys have been together for 5 years, which is an incredible run for any boy band. They fully deserve to have at least a year to work on their own projects. There's absolutely no bad blood between them, and they're all 100% behind the decision. It is definitely not a split, and they fully intend to get back together at some time in the future." That seems to be the end of the situation for now. So, what's the big issue? Record producers have a long-standing history of expecting boy bands to become million-dollar making machines, at the expense of their health and well-being. In an interview with the Evening Standard, Zayn revealed that management choreographed his every move, including his statement about leaving One Direction. Management took over the minutiae. Days were structured so that you didn't have time to think because you were concentrating so hard on work. I lost my bearings of what time it was, sometimes what day it was. He later described One Direction as a machine and detailed the band's rise to fame and rigorous touring schedule. "I think the back-to-back performances toward the end when we were in stadiums, I wasn't really ever able to enjoy the experience. The machine had gone too fast." Liam followed suit by admitting that he shouldn't have been able to do as many shows as the band did, and that he would drink before going on stage to manage the stress. "Going out and putting that happy smile on my face and singing the songs, honestly, sometimes it was like putting on one of those costumes, going out there, and underneath the costume, people don't really see what's going on." In 2010, journalist and critic Philip Hensher called the X Factor a ruthless money-making machine and revealed the talent show's lucrative sponsorship deals, upwards of $75 million. He highlighted that having artists compete with each other is one of the main ways they can gain success with the public. It's clear why the industry likes it. It is predictable, though not infallible, and it creates an enormous revenue stream out of the whole process of development and promotion, so that whether the eventual single sells or not hardly matters anymore. He also highlighted that producers know that their audience wants a story, and that every single person that watches the The X Factor is a target of relentless selling. On November 4th, record producer Simon Cowell announced that he'll be launching a new show called X Factor the Band. In an interview with The Sun, he said his business is getting bigger than ever before and that he wants to find a new band to compete with the K-pop industry. K-pop is ruling the world. This is a show to find a band to launch UK pop. It's more than winning a record contract, it's starting a new music wave. He added that every competing group will be put together by him, just like One Direction, Little Mix, and Fifth Harmony. But this isn't the first time boy bands have been preyed upon by the rich and powerful. Here are some other cases. In the documentary The Boy Band Con, The Lou Pearlman Story, the former Backstreet Boys and NSync members detail how their rise to fame became one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. In the early 90s, record producer and con artist Lou Pearlman formed both bands and manipulated them into becoming rivals. Similar to One Direction, most of the members were teenagers at the time, ranging between 13 to 24 years old. In the beginning of the documentary, the former members detailed their intense boot camp schedule. We were working our off, day in and day night. Lou had these gondola hangars for his airships, no air conditioning in there, it was hot as balls. We would learn how to dance, we would do choreography, and we would learn how to sing on a microphone without being out of breath. Probably rehearse 6 to 8 hours a day in there. I'm surprised none of us ever got heat stroke. You're talking Orlando, Florida in August. Co-founder of Teen People, Lori Majewski, said no one worked harder than the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and they never got a day off. In the rare case that they did, they were scheduled to appear at photo shoots. She also said how much money the band's management team made back then. It was cha-ching. I mean, the amount of money that was being made, you can't even imagine because we don't sell records like that today. You know, most people today, they buy 1 or 2 records a year. Back in the teen pop period, they were buying 5 a week. According to reports, Backstreet Boys is the best-selling boy band of all time and has sold 100 million albums. In comparison, NSYNC has sold 28.8 million albums. Both are listed as 2 of the top boy bands of all time. Despite reaching worldwide success from selling out stadiums and arenas, the Backstreet Boys weren't fairly compensated. Most of the money made went to their record producer, Lou. In their first 4 years as a band, his company made about $10 million in revenue. The band only received a cumulative $300,000, with AJ revealing in the Boy Band Con that some of the members of the band could barely afford their rent. NSYNC weren't fairly compensated either, and were given a mere $35 a day. After 2 years of touring and promoting their first album, they received their first checks and were shocked at the amount. I open up the envelope, I see the check, and oh my gosh, my heart sunk. I couldn't believe the number I was looking at. The check was $10,000. And not to sound ungrateful, but when you compare it to how many hours we had to put into this group for years, it didn't even touch minimum wage at all. Along with being swindled, the former band members were expected to attend every appearance. We would go door to door to every single solitary radio station and do every radio interview. We would sing a cappella on the radio stations. When we released our first US album, things started to really pick up, and in doing so, it wouldn't go away. In an interview with Rolling Stone, former Backstreet Boys member Brian Littrell said he felt pressured to put his responsibilities to the band before his health. I delayed surgery twice because of the tours. I mean, the saddest thing is that I scheduled open heart surgery around my work schedule. It was like nobody really cared or felt that it was important because the career was moving on. He added that 8 weeks after his surgery, he performed on stage and that oxygen tanks were kept nearby at all times in case he needed to use them. Years later, he was diagnosed with muscle tension dysphonia, a condition that causes the muscles around the voice box to constrict. The Backstreet Boys and NSYNC later sued Lou. For NSYNC, the decision was made after former NSYNC member JC Chasez asked his uncle to take a look at the band's contract. The deeper they dug, the worse it got, and it was just this webs upon webs of robbery. He said, "This is one of the worst contracts I've ever seen in music history, and y'all need to try and get out of this." In the end, both bands were able to break their contracts with Lou, though he was still able to receive 1/6 of the Backstreet Boys' earnings. When he passed away, the New York Times reported that almost all of the artists that he worked with were young men, and some accused him of inappropriate behavior. This was reportedly common among other bands. According to News, the Jonas Brothers, B2K, LFO, and New Kids on the Block allegedly experienced the same pressure and mistreatment. Overall, what Liam and his former band members went through is heartbreaking. They were teenagers when they met each other at the X Factor boot camp and were pressured into working non-stop. According to child development expert Nancy Carlson Page, the younger a kid is when he or she gets into this business, the more likely it will be damaging because their needs are not met. The basic needs of childhood have nothing to do with working or the entertainment industry. A young child doesn't even understand what the entertainment industry is. More often than not, management is overly focused on perfecting their band's look, voice, and every move. This leads to members having to work non-stop and risk damaging their mental and physical health. What do you think about this story? Do you think boy bands should make a comeback and that the industry needs a change? Let me know in the comments below.